Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you for tuning in to Cedarly Radio, your guide to films playing at the Art House for the week of March 13th to March 19th. I'm your host, Aaron Spears.
And I'm Dave Huffman, Director of Marketing for Cleveland Cinemas. On this week's episode, we'll be discussing The Traitor and Wendy, as well as my cold.
Well, Dave, we always like to start off the show on a positive note, an enthusiastic recommendation, be it good movie or bad. What have you got for your movie of the week pick this week?
My movie of the week is a film that we're not opening at the Cedarly, but we are opening over at the Capitol and Chagrin Cinemas. It's a new movie that is just opening up on Friday, and it is called The Hunt. It is the new film by Craig Zobel. We've played a couple of his films in the past. He's a great little indie director. We played Z for Zachariah and Compliance, both of those over at the Capitol. Both challenging, really good indies. And his new movie, The Hunt, is kind of being completely mismarketed by the distributor, in my opinion, because if you watch that trailer, it just plays like it's some sort of action horror movie about, people being hunted down. But
Right.
It's really an incredibly entertaining, very dark comedy, literally laugh out loud dark comedy with great social commentary. It was the film that was supposed to come out last fall, but then they moved it because, of course, since this is America, there was sadly a mass shooting right before the film was supposed to come out, so they moved it. And it was also getting a lot of backlash against or from the right-wing media, specifically because the film, like in its one sentence description, is something like, a group of liberal elites hunts deplorables, or something like that. But that is not the film. I mean, the movie is much more complex. It totally takes stabs at the left and the right equally, and certainly the liberal elites are not the heroes of this film. And it's a really, really entertaining, very fun movie. It is pretty bloody because it's, like I said, it's kind of comedically gory in parts, but it is really entertaining. It's got Hilary Swank and Ike Barinholtz and Betty Gilpin. It's really good. I hope people give it a chance. Don't just rule it out based on that trailer, is what I'd like to tell everybody.
Well, it's also co-written by Damien Lindelof, who's best known with like The Leftovers and Lost, and most recently The Watchmen on HBO. So all those movies that he's coming from as a writer too, and as a producer, really great emphasis on story and character. A good hook though too, I think, in there, which is I think what it's a Blumhouse film, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It seems to be like the kings right now of like that high concept, pull you in idea, executed very smartly and for a modest budget, so that it actually makes money and stays a profitable company.
Yeah, but I feel like they've just completely messed it up because they're not really selling the movie that they're actually made.
Oh, I see what you're saying, right.
So I think that it is going to be one of those tough movies to sell because it sort of doesn't really fall into any easy genre. So I think that's one of the issues. Yeah.
I just brought up the poster, and I know we love sort of picking on posters with like the critical quotes every now and then.
Yeah.
And it's just full of things like a disturbance to our country, political uproar, not appropriate. It's really leaning into that.
Yeah, they're playing up the controversy from whatever the film was supposed to be coming out last fall. So
yeah. It even has September 27th is crossed out with the new date written in. So
it's like the most controversial film that no one's seen,
right,
decide for yourself. Yeah, they're just playing that up. But I was laughing all the way through it. I just thought it was really fun.
I'm looking forward to it. It's like you said, when you first came away from the screening, you were like, "You've got to see it." And I was like, "Ugh, that one?" Like, no, it's not that movie though.
Yeah, the trailer is a lie, is what I would say. Yeah. And what about you, Aaron? What have you seen this week?
So I'm pretty sure you fall in the same category, Dave. Every once in a while, movies come along where like you just fall into like that movie rabbit hole where you just want to revisit it again and again, and you kind of want to just live in that world. And I fell into that rabbit hole this past week with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to recommend it as the movie of the week for a different reason that I think people kind of forget about in this day and age. I bought it on BluRay because I wanted to own the movie. And there's a bunch of really great special features that are included. And I think in the age of streaming, I mean, Criterion Channel does a really good job of getting special features and stuff like that streaming, but not to the extent that you get with home media and actually owning a physical copy of something. I've been watching the movie a couple times this week, but also I've been playing the soundtrack on vinyl, actually, several times. It's a fun, just upbeat kind of background soundtrack to listen to, but also it's an era of music I'm unfamiliar with. But just as a teaser, you get a bunch of extra deleted scenes that you didn't see in the movie on the Blu-ray, which I think that's always pretty fun. They edit together the almost not a full episode of Bounty Law, but all the clips that you see in the movie. They put it together kind of in its own partial episode. So that started up. I was just giddy to see it all sort of together as the episode would play out. There's also a really awesome extended scene. It's probably a good 5-6 minutes. I believe it's all one take, where it's DiCaprio on the set with I forget the guy who looks like Peter Fonda, who plays the director he's working with.
Oh, yeah.
On the pilot. But there's an extended scene between like actor director that you can just totally see as being like a Tarantino, Christoph Waltz or Tarantino DiCaprio scene where you see them clicking, talking about like the craft and the art of acting and directing and film in general. That was really fun. There's my favorite of all of them is the Cars of 1968. They interviewed the two guys who I don't know if they run a body shop or what, but they are just car experts the way Tarantino is a film expert. And they're going into like how they got all the cars, and they were even offered like the Manson family car from whatever collector or museum has that one. And they're like, that'd be inappropriate. We can't do that. So they took pictures and they just, they made their own.
Created that, yeah.
Yeah. They got the actual truck from the FBI TV show that was used. So they gave it a new paint job and used that for the sequences when DiCaprio's character guest stars in FBI. There's all kinds of, they're 6 to 8 minutes long, but all kinds of really cool behind the scenes stuff that you get if you actually own a movie that you enjoy. Also, if it ever stops streaming somewhere, you have it. You can still watch it. So
there you go.
Worth watching. Worth owning, and then also watching again and again. That is a recommendation for this week. We've got a couple new ones, Dave, for coming out to the theater this weekend. One of them we're both very excited to see. The first one, well, I'm excited to see both actually, but the first one on that list is The Traitor, co-written and directed by Marco Bellocchio. I'm bad with Italian names. Is that right?
Bellocchio, probably.
This is the real-life story of Tommaso Buscetta, who is the so-called boss of the two worlds. He was the first mafia informant in Sicily in the 1980s that led to the downfall of the Cosa Nostra in Italy, but then also he was instrumental in the, I think it's pretty poorly named, the Pizza Connection trial in America that brought down a lot of the Sicilian-American mafiosos of that time period in 80s New York City as well.
Well, yeah, like you, I'm a huge fan of gangster epic films, so this one is one that I've been dying to see, and I missed one whenever we had a screening of it quite a while ago. I wasn't able to go to that one, so I'm going to have to catch it this week whenever we have it here at the Cedar Lee, so I'm excited to finally get to see it.
This one, it was on the short list, or I don't know how the exact voting process goes, but it was one of the Palme d'Or nominations at this year's Cannes Film Festival, and it hit the New York Film Festival, Toronto. So I looked up a little bit about the David Di Donatello Awards. That's the Italian version of the Oscars. If anybody has access, I don't know how you'd be able to watch these, but they're coming up on April 3rd of this year. The Traitor is nominated for 17 of those awards. I mean, so it's clearly like one of the most celebrated films in Italy this calendar year. So it looks like if Scorsese was in Italy making a gangster epic, this would be that kind of movie. At least that's how the trailer plays it up. So really fascinating there. I was wondering why they named it. I mean, I know why they named it The Traitor, but it when you watch the preview, and we didn't play any audio because it's it's in Italian, so it's not going to make a lot of sense in an audio format. But please go watch the trailer. It would probably, if you're interested in mafia kind of films, it would definitely sell you on this movie. It's got a larger scope than just like the one guy. It's sort of, as he's telling his story, you get this really expansive story of how the tentacles of the mafia, especially up to the 1980s, really was deep into not just crime in Italy, but also politics as well. And there's one shot I wanted to single out from the trailer where it's a couple driving down a road. All of a sudden, the car in front of them on this bridge blows up. And it's a one shot from the backseat of their car. You see this car blow up, the bridge collapses, and then their car just goes into free fall. Like it's a really impressive looking film, just even in the trailer. So yeah, I'm pretty psyched to see this on the big screen.
And speaking of other visually interesting movies, we've got the second film by writer-director Benh Zeitlin, Wendy. He is, of course, known for his first film, which was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director, Beast of the Southern Wild. This is his second feature, and it is about lost on a mysterious island where aging and time have come unglued. Wendy must fight to save her family, her freedom, and the joyous spirit of youth from the deadly peril of growing up.
Remember the voice in your head? The one that said, "Sneak away."
Crazy! Wendy, wait!
Here is the place it came from.
We're underwater! You will never grow up! Never! So began the legend of Peter, the boy who would not grow up. Want to fly? We can fly. Really fly? Fly! Tell Mama I'm just staying a little longer. Tell her I miss her and I love her.
Beware, children. You can leave yourself behind. You won't even know when it happened.
This is where lost boys go when they're really lost.
All children grow up. But some, the wild ones, the ones with the light in their eye, escape.
Dave, that synopsis sounds so familiar to me.
It really just sounds like a story, like a classic story that someone's doing a new take on.
Yeah.
So this is a revisionist version of Peter Pan, of course. And I like whenever a director takes a classic kind of fairy tale story, for lack of a better word, and, does a completely different take on it. So I'm interested in seeing this, of course. I was not one of those people that just thought Beast of the Southern Wild was this amazing cinematic experience. I thought it was an interesting movie, but not as good as a lot of people seem to think it was.
I'm one of
but
those
I was
people.
always anxious. I know. I was always anxious to see his second film.
Yeah.
That's what I would always say. I'm like, it's a good movie, it's an interesting debut, but I don't quite see what everybody was tripping over themselves about. But now that his second film's out, I guess I get my wish because I get to see what his second film is. And it clearly looks like he's got a lot of the same kind of visual style and even the same themes about working with young children, and that's apparently something that he specifically likes to do, is work with kids that aren't kind of actors yet, and to get a more naturalistic kind of element to his performances from these young performers.
Yeah, one of his interviews was about how much he loves working with people, specifically kids, like you said, that have little or no experience because they're not fixated on Hollywood, their careers, and presumably they're a bit more focused on, granted, this is like in an ideal world, you get like a 6-year-old a bit more focused on like the story and the process and the acting. But he says he likes to have his film sets more like a quote unquote playground of fun more than work, which I feel like you really get in this trailer. Like there's just an exuberance and an energy, even just in the trailer for this one, that the kids are clearly communicating and expressing, because it's a real honest, like you said, performance. I did want to mention that for all the film geeks out there, this movie was shot on 16 millimeter film. I forget what island they were shooting on, but fairly treacherous-ish, not like the lighthouse level treacherous, but kind of up there as far as the terrain goes. So they needed to be very lightweight and mobile as well. One of the things that was really striking to me about Beast of the Southern Wild, being a huge fan of that film, was the kind of visual style, like you said, that he's got. And I was really curious, is that something he did just because that was what that particular story called for? Was he going to kind of change it up? What would his style be like? Was he going to do a romantic comedy for his follow-up, or what was it going to be like? This one, actually, he is working with a new cinematographer, Sturla Brandith Groveland. I'm probably mispronouncing a bunch of that name. This was the cinematographer for a film, Victoria, from a couple years ago, which was an all one-shot, like over 2 hour long film. That's really worth seeing. It's really interesting. A woman who's out like clubbing for the night gets caught up with the wrong group of people and ends up involved in a bank robbery.
I knew I recognized that title. Yes, that was a really good film.
And so working with that cinematographer, someone who's clearly, I feel like the one shot is, could be a gimmick in filmmaking, but it's also like if you're a cinematographer and pull that off too, like what a feather in your cap for, for your resume there. And it's no exception here. They did mention too, I know you really enjoy the company of large crowds of children, Dave, so this is really right up your alley. They auditioned over 1,500 kids for Wendy before they settled on their cast. But this is also auditioning unknown, so I'd be also curious. He talks about having the playground on set when he's making his movies, specifically Wendy in this case. But I can't even imagine, like, how do you go about auditioning, and how crazy is the audition process for a bunch of unknowns who are, haven't auditioned before and are brand new to this industry? It just sounds like chaos more than playground to me.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare to me.
Yeah. And we'll be right back with the special events this week at the theater. Well, special events are becoming a bigger and bigger portion of theatrical programming, and the Cedar Lee is no exception to that. So we want to take a little bit of time to let you know about the events we have coming up this week at the theater.
First up, we have another Met Opera live in HD presenting Wagner's The Flying Dutchman. That's going to be Sunday, March 14th at 12:55 p.m. That's the live presentation from New York. And then Wednesday, March 18th at 1 p.m. in an encore presentation. And both of those are also going to be playing at Chagrin Cinemas and the Apollo Theater, as well as the Cedar Lee.
Well, it is the second Saturday of the month, and it's also March. Actually, a friend of mine texted me a great Tommy Was So meme quote that says, "Oh, hi, March," since it is now the month of March. It is time for The Room. The Melt Bar and Grill Late Shift is presenting The Room Saturday, March 14th at 10 p.m. Now in its, was it 10th year now in Cleveland?
It's over 10 years.
Over 10 years,
yeah.
Man. And still going strong. Bring your own spoons, and if you haven't enjoyed it previously, you've got to see this. You can't just sit at home and watch this one. You got to see it in the theater with a crowd. Bring your own spoons. You'll figure it out as you go.
And we have the Bolshoi Ballet's production of Swan Lake on Sunday, March 15th at 11 a.m. and Thursday, March 19th at 7 p.m. And I don't know that there's a better-known, more classic ballet than Swan Lake. So if you're just looking to kind of try out a ballet, this would be a great starter one because it's certainly one of the most iconic.
And from one of the most iconic ballet companies in the world as well.
Absolutely.
So you can't go wrong.
The premiere,
Yeah. Fathom Events presents King Kong as part of the TCM Classics on the Big Screen series. This is playing both at Cedar Lee Theater and at our sister Chagrin Theater location, or Chagrin Cinemas location, Sunday, March 15th at 1 p.m. I cannot recommend this movie on the big screen more or enough. Yeah. It's one of those that still holds up. I don't remember if I mentioned on the podcast previously, but when my son was maybe like 8 or 9, I popped in the original King Kong. Actually, it was whenever Skull Island was coming out. And he was really psyched for that. And I was like, well, we got to try the original. And you would think, that movie of that era is not going to hold the attention of a kid. But, like, he was still, like, held his attention, was, like, kind of ooh and ahhing at the right spots. And it really is not just a technical marvel for its time, but it's one that's also lasted the test of time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. And, yes, this is, of course, the original King Kong. This isn't the Jessica Lange version from the 70s.
Oh, good point. Good point. Oh, I didn't show him that one yet. He's only seen the original and the new one. So I'll have to get the 70s one worked in there somewhere, too. Get the reaction from a now 12-year-old, see what he thinks.
There you go.
And if you're a regular listener and are wondering where our Cedar Lee 3 picks are for this week, follow the links in the show notes or head over to our social media accounts where we are posting our, in honor of the Traitor, we decided to go with mafia films this week, non-Scorsese mafia films to be specific, because we've already done a Scorsese film, Cedar Lee 3, so we figured let's just exclude the Scorsese mafia oeuvre from this list. So mafia films this week in honor of The Traitor opening at the theater. And join us next week when, as of right now, we'll be discussing the new films Burden and Hope Gap. As always, thank you for tuning in to Cedar Lee Radio and lending us your ears this week. All the music heard on the show is original music written by Grant Heineman and performed by the New Heights Jazz Ensemble, used with their permission, of course. Visit clevelandcinemas.com for correct showtimes and to purchase advance tickets. Also, there are links in the show notes. You can use those if you'd like as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Cedar Lee Theater, spelled with an R-E at the end because we're fancy like that. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast, and while you're subscribing, leave us a rating and review. review, or better yet, tell a fellow film geek about the show. We'll see you at the movies.